Hello everyone! Today I'll present you some of the basic and most important things you need in order to begin quilling. The first one is the quilling tool. Depending where you live, you may have access to a store where you can buy a nice quilling tool as this one, or if you don't, you may create one for yourself. There are many ways of doing it and I'll show you a few of them. For the first one, you need a needle and a dowel, or you can use a pencil or simply a piece of wood. You just break the upper part of the needle and then insert it in the dowel. I used myself this type of tool for several months before buying my nice quilling tool. For the second one, you need a dowel or a piece of wood, and with a cutter, just give it the quilling tool shape. For the third one, you need a pen from which you remove the lower cap, and then you have to remove the ink cartridge and insert a toothpick previously sharpened and slotted in its place. For the third one, you need a mechanical pencil that has a plastic tip which you can cut and transform in a quilling tool. The second thing you need is paper. Each quiller has their own idea about what type of paper is better for their quilling. And I think there is no best paper for quilling in general because it depends on the person's preference, the paper's availability in the place where the person lives, the price, and the type of work one does. Therefore, I'll present you some different options you may have. The first one is to buy the already pre-cut quilling paper. This paper comes in different colors and sizes, and the advantage is that you don't have to spend time in cutting it, you just have to use it in your quilling projects. This paper, in my opinion, has more disadvantages than advantages, and one is that it is usually more expensive than if you buy and cut your own paper, and the second is that it is very thin and, in my opinion, does not look as nice as the thicker paper. The third disadvantage is that it limits you in terms of color. If, for example, I want to use different shades of a color, it may be more difficult because the quilling paper is not as popular and does not come in hundreds of colors as the uncut paper comes. And the last disadvantage is that its cut size limits you if you want to use the same color for the background of a card or a frame, or if you want to make a rose from a wider strip as I did for this flower. The second type of paper is the craft paper that comes, as I said, in a multitude of colors and shades, sizes, thickness, and textures. The most important aspect you have to consider when you want to buy your quilling paper is its thickness. In most countries, the paper is differentiated by thickness and weight. The normal copy paper, for example, has 80 grams per square meter. The paper you use in quilling should have between 120 and 180 grams, the one of 160 grams being the best one in my opinion. The paper that has between 200 and 300 grams is not good for quilling because it's too thick and not flexible, but you can use it as a background for your cards or frames. In order to cut the paper, you have also different possibilities. The first one is to mark the paper with a pencil using a ruler and cut it with a cutter. The disadvantage with this is that it takes a long time. It took me, for example, 8 minutes to measure and cut 30 strips of paper. Also, if you choose this method, you need to buy a good quality cutter and a metallic ruler instead of a wooden or plastic one that may be damaged in the process of cutting. The second one is to use a self-healing mat that already has measuring grids. The disadvantage with it is that the mat is usually expensive and many times does not actually self-heal. If you don't have a self-healing mat, you can use a printed guideline that you may glue on a cutting pad as I did for this one. The fourth possibility is to use a manual paper shredder. The advantage is that you can cut a whole sheet of paper at once, and it only took me 12 seconds to cut 30 strips of paper with my shredder, and this is because mine is small, but if you buy a bigger one you can cut around 60 strips of paper in less than 15 seconds. The disadvantage with it is that the cutting is not so smooth and it does not look as nice as the one cut with a cutter. If you decide to use this method, please be aware that there are different brands of manual paper shredders and some do a really ugly job and the cut has a jagged look. I think I'm pretty satisfied with mine, but I have to admit that the hand-cut paper looks more elegant, so I'll try to use it more. Here I have some teardrops made out of different types of paper I talked about earlier. All these paper strips had the same length and I also used the same size in my circle sizer. For the first one I used a pre-cut quilling strip, as I can see is pretty thin. For the second one I used 160 grams paper cut with a shredder, and for this one I used the same paper cut manually with a cutter. You can see the difference between the two. For the last one, I used 300 grams paper, and in my opinion, for the same shape and size, the one manually cut with a cutter looks the best. Some of you asked me about the way I store my paper. I usually cut my paper only when I need it, but I always have leftovers that I store in a drawer or a box. I just use a small piece of a different color strip and make like a small ring around them that will keep them from not mixing with the other colors. The third important thing you need for quilling is glue. The glue comes also in many different types, and some types work better for specific jobs. I know most quillers use the usual white school glue, and when I began quilling I bought a bottle that was thick and would not dry transparent. I did not like it at all, and I decided to try a transparent glue that I really liked because it would dry faster and of course transparent. There is no best brand of glue to recommend. As I lived in different countries, I always found a good one to use. A disadvantage with the transparent glue is that it's thicker than the white one and is not good to use for certain jobs like for the drawing type. I tried several types of them, and the glue would leave a transparent but shiny mark in my drawing, which I did not like. That's why I decided to try again the typical white glue, the thinner one that dries transparent of course, and I was really pleased with the results. Another advantage of this one is that you can also use it as a sealant for your jewelry or other quilling objects that hardens and makes it waterproof. Of course, there are special types of quilling sealant though, but I have no experience with them and I cannot recommend them. In choosing your glue, my advice is to try both types and see which one you prefer better. The fourth one of the very important tools are the scissors. You can use any type you have in your home, but if you want to buy them, buy the ones that have the blades thinner and the points sharper, because they are better for some quilling techniques, like for example in the fringing I use for creating this flower. The last very important tool in quilling is the circle sizer. You need it if you want to have the same size for your shapes. If you measure them in your hand, the probability is for the sizes to be unequal and the flower or leaf you create to look uneven. I really hope this video was useful to you. If you still have questions, feel free to contact me.